The document does not bear a dramatic title stamp classified in red ink. It is a series of interagency white papers, budget justifications, and continuity of government protocols scattered across different servers and filed under bland bureaucratic headings. This is Project Nightfall, not a conspiracy theory but a logical contingency, a multi-phase blueprint for the largest transfer of property in human history, justified by an emergency so severe it suspends all prior notions of law and ownership. Its ultimate goal is not death for greed, but control for stability, a systematic disarming of a populace, both physically and economically, to render it incapable of resistance to a new, imposed order. The confiscation is not of guns alone, but of the very means of self-sufficiency and dissent. The night falls not with a blackout, but with the quiet click of a legal mandate, a declaration that the social contract is void and all assets are now contingent on compliance. Phase 1 is the creation of the justifying emergency, the catalyzing shock. Nightfall requires a crisis of such magnitude and visceral terror that the public will beg for radical intervention. This could be a coordinated, catastrophic cyber attack that cripples the financial and power grids for weeks. It could be a manufactured bioweapon release or a genuinely devastating pandemic with a far higher fatality rate. It could be a period of orchestrated civil chaos, a cascade of violent incidents labeled as a national insurrection. The key is that the event must create widespread panic, a breakdown in basic services, and a palpable sense that the nation is on the brink of dissolution. The media, already primed, will switch to a monolithic, hysterical tone, broadcasting images of chaos and demanding immediate, unquestioning action from authorities. In this atmosphere of primal fear, Phase 2 is activated. Phase 2 is the declaration of a state of national renewal, a euphemism for martial law with a benevolent facade. The president, citing insurrection acts and emergency powers, will address the nation from a secure location. The speech will be somber, resolute, and fatherly. It will speak of painful but necessary measures to restore order, secure essential supplies, and protect the vulnerable from chaos. It will announce the temporary nationalization of critical infrastructure, communication networks, and financial systems. It will introduce the Stability and Recovery Authorization, a sweeping executive order that grants federal coordinators unprecedented power over all aspects of commerce and movement. Crucially, it will call for a universal sacrifice, a suspension of certain rights for the duration of the emergency. The public, terrified and seeing no other source of salvation, will largely acquiesce. The stage is now set for the confiscations to begin, not as punitive raids, but as public safety operations. The stage now set for the confiscations to begin, not as punitive raids, but as public safety operations. The stage is now under the Stability Authorization. All electronic financial transactions will be routed through a newly established Federal Stability Clearinghouse. The mandatory conversion of all private retirement accounts, 401k plans and IRAs, into special Treasury recovery bonds will be announced. These bonds will be non-transferable and will have a 10-year maturity, effectively freezing the wealth of the middle and upper classes. Simultaneously, a daily withdrawal limit will be imposed on all bank and investment accounts, straining large sums beyond reach. The justification will be to prevent capital flight and to pool national resources for recovery. For the average person, their life savings will vanish from their control, transformed into a government IOU with no guarantee of future value. This financial neutering creates immediate dependency, making the population reliant on the state for the distribution of resources through the next phase. Phase 4 is a consolidation of essential assets, beginning with food, fuel, and medicine. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, massively expanded and militarized, will establish regional distribution centers. A mandatory census of all private stockpiles beyond a 1-week supply of food, fuel, and prescription medications will be decreed. Citizens will be required to register these assets via a new government app linked to their digital identity. Failure to register will result in severe penalties. Following registration, a reassignment order will be issued, stating that surplus supplies are being patriotically redistributed to areas of greater need and to support federal recovery workers. Compliance officers, accompanied by National Guard units, will begin methodical collections from registered address. This is not looting. It is bureaucratic redistribution, a lawful order under the emergency powers. Resistance is framed not as defensive property, but as hoarding and sabotage of the national recovery effort. The community is turned against itself, with neighbors encouraged to report non-compliance, trading loyalty for priority access to the distribution centers. Phase 5 is the disarmament, the core of Project Nightfall's physical control mechanism. It will not be called confiscation. It will be the National Weapon Safety and Securement Initiative. The narrative will be that in a time of societal breakdown and rampant misinformation, the proliferation of privately held firearms presents an unacceptable risk to federal personnel and orderly recovery efforts. All firearms will be required to be securely stored at designated regional depots for the duration of the emergency. Owners will be issued a digital receipt, promising return when stability is restored. Voluntary compliance will be encouraged with promises of extra ration credits. Following a short grace period, door-to-door collections will begin, utilizing real-time data from social media, financial records, and previous gun purchase databases to target known owners. The teams will be a mix of federalized law enforcement from sympathetic agencies and newly formed Civilian Stability Corps, young idealists recruited to build a new America. The operation will be filmed, showcasing polite professional teams and grateful citizens doing their patriotic duty. Isolated incidents of resistance will be highlighted by the media as proof of the dangerous extremist threat that necessitates the entire program. The goal is not to win a firefight, but to delegitimize and isolate the act of resistance itself. Phase 6 is the containment and filtering of the population. With financial autonomy removed and physical resistance crippled, the focus shifts to ideological compliance. The digital identity platform, now mandatory for receiving ration cards and accessing distribution centers, will be integrated with a loyalty scoring system. Public statements, social media history, association with flag groups, and even consumption patterns will feed the algorithm. A low score will result in reduced rations, denial of travel permits, and mandatory attendance at community re-education sessions. High scores will grant access to better housing, premium food packages, and positions within the new administrative structure. This system creates a permanent underclass of the non-compliant, who are not executed but slowly starved of resources and social oxygen. The final confiscation is of hope itself, as the pathway to a tolerable life is made contingent on utter ideological submission. Dissent becomes a luxury no one can afford, as it risks not only their own score, but that of their entire family unit. Project Nightfall's brilliance is its bureaucratic, lawful veneer. It is not a coup. It is the execution of long-dormant continuity of government plans by a permanent administrative class that sees democratic consent as an obstacle to existential crisis management. The confiscations are not for plunder, but for control, to create a population that is fed, housed, monitored, and utterly dependent. The end state is a nation of tenants in government housing, eating government food, spending government digital credits, and expressing only government-approved thoughts. The American individual, with his private property, his self-reliance, and his defiant spirit, is declared an obsolete model, a hazard to the collective survival of the hive. The night falls not when the lights go out, but when you look at your children and realize that their safety depends on your silence, your compliance, and your willingness to hand the keys of your former life to a polite young man in a uniform who promises it is only temporary. The temporary becomes the permanent. The emergency becomes the normal, and the blueprint of Nightfall becomes the constitution of a new and terrible dawn, where you own nothing, you are nothing, and you obey everything. The silence that follows is not peace, but the deep, hollow quiet of a population that has had everything, including its will,